I never believed in fate until the day that manila envelope arrived. The one that would shatter everything I thought I knew about myself, my family, and the woman I'd called Mom for 32 years. But I'm getting ahead of myself. If you're watching this video, you're about to witness how a simple cotton swab changed our lives forever. Trust me, you'll want to stay until the end, and if our story touches you, please hit that like button and subscribe to follow our journey. Some days I still wake up wondering if it was all just a dream. It started 3 months ago on my birthday. My husband James surprised me with DNA testing kits, one for each of us. For fun, he said with that boyish grin I fell in love with. Wouldn't it be cool to see where our ancestors came from? I remember laughing, teasing him about finally discovering if he really did have that Cherokee princess great-grandmother he always claimed. We swabbed our cheeks that night after birthday cake, the wine flowing, making ridiculous predictions about what we'd discover. Neither of us could have imagined what was coming. I grew up in a small town in Ohio, the kind where everyone knows your business before you do. My childhood was ordinary in the best ways: a loving mother who worked as a nurse, a father who coached Little League, and a younger sister who alternated between being my best friend and worst enemy depending on the day. We weren't wealthy, but we never wanted for anything important. Mom made sure of that, working double shifts when necessary, her hands always smelling of hospital soap no matter how many times she washed them. The DNA kit sat on our kitchen counter for almost a week before we finally remembered to mail them. James joked that we should have our families do it too, make a whole event of it. Your mom would get a kick out of it, he said. I agreed, thinking it might be fun to surprise her with the results. I called her that evening, and she seemed oddly hesitant. Oh honey, those things aren't very accurate, she said. Besides, we know where we come from. Your father's family has that whole genealogy book from the Historical Society. I didn't push it. Mom had been more withdrawn since Dad passed 2 years ago, and I chalked it up to her general disinterest in technology. 6 weeks later, the email arrived. Your DNA results are ready. I was alone that afternoon, grading papers for my 5th grade class while James was at work. I clicked the link, excited to finally see if James was right about my suspected Scandinavian heritage from my father's side. The website loaded slowly, building anticipation as colorful charts began to appear. I scanned the ethnicity estimates, mostly what I expected, though the Eastern European percentage was higher than I'd thought. Then I clicked on the tab labeled DNA Matches. The first match made sense: James, labeled as spouse. The second was my sister Kate. But the third match stopped my heart. Parent-child relationship, 99.9% match. The name wasn't my mother's. It was someone called Eleanor Winters. A stranger. I stared at the screen, convinced there was some mistake. I refreshed the page. I logged out and logged back in. The result remained unchanged. According to this test, my biological mother wasn't the woman who had raised me, it was someone I'd never heard of. My hands trembled as I called James, barely able to form words when he answered. There's been a mix-up with the test, I told him when he rushed home, his face pale with concern. It has to be wrong. But deep down, something shifted inside me. Little inconsistencies throughout my life suddenly demanded attention. How I looked nothing like my sister, how there were no baby photos of me before 3 months, how Mom sometimes got a faraway look when people said I had my father's eyes. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake beside James, my mind racing through possibilities, each more unsettling than the last. Was I adopted? Was there a hospital mix-up? Or was there something my parents, or the woman I called Mom, had kept from me my entire life? The next morning, I called my mother. My voice must have betrayed me because her first words were, "What's wrong, Sarah?" I couldn't bring myself to ask directly. Instead, I said I was coming to visit that weekend. Alone. The 2-hour drive to my childhood home felt like crossing an ocean. I rehearsed questions, imagined scenarios, then dismissed them all as impossible. My mother greeted me at the door with her usual warm hug, but I felt myself stiffen. Did she notice? We made small talk over coffee, discussing Kate's new job and my student science projects, until finally I couldn't bear it anymore. "Mom," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, "I did that DNA test." I watched her face carefully. Something flickered in her eyes, recognition, then fear. It showed something strange. It said my biological mother is someone named Eleanor Winters. The coffee mug slipped from her hands, shattering on the kitchen floor. Neither of us moved to clean it up. Her face crumpled, tears forming instantly. "I wanted to tell you so many times," she whispered. "Your father wouldn't allow it." The story spilled out of her then, 32 years of secrets released in a torrent of tears and trembling words. I wasn't adopted, not exactly. My father had had an affair with Eleanor Winters when my mother and he were briefly separated. When Eleanor discovered she was pregnant, she reached out to my father, who had since reconciled with my mother. Eleanor was young, single, and not ready for motherhood. My parents, the people I had always known as my parents, agreed to raise me as their own. My birth certificate listed my mother's name, a fiction made legal through my father's connections in the small town. "She wanted to know you," my mother said, her voice breaking. "But your father was afraid it would confuse you, damage our family." After a few years, she stopped asking. I don't know where she is now. I sat in stunned silence, trying to reconcile this new reality with the life I'd always known. The woman across from me, the one who had bandaged my knees and checked for monsters under my bed, who had taught me to read and cheered at my graduation, she wasn't my biological mother. Yet in every way that mattered, she was my mom. "Do you hate me?" she asked, her voice small and frightened. "No," I answered truthfully. "But I don't know how to feel about any of this." I left her house that day with more questions than answers. Who was Eleanor Winters? Where was she now? Did she ever think about the baby she gave up? Did I have half-siblings somewhere? The drive home was a blur of tears and confusion. James was waiting when I returned, his face etched with concern. I collapsed into his arms and told him everything. He held me as I cried, then made a decision that would change everything again. "We should try to find her," he said simply. "Eleanor. Your biological mother. Don't you want to know?" Did I? The question haunted me for days. Part of me wanted to pretend the test had never happened, to continue my life as it had been. But another part, a growing, insistent part, needed answers. After a week of sleepless nights, I agreed. Finding Eleanor Winters proved surprisingly easy and impossibly difficult at the same time. Her name was uncommon enough that basic internet searches yielded results, but common enough that we found several women who could have been her. James, ever practical, suggested we narrow it down by age and location. We knew she would be around my mother's age and had lived in Ohio at some point. After eliminating possibilities, we found 3 women who could be my biological mother. One lived in Florida, one in California, and one just 2 hours away in Cincinnati. The proximity of the last one made my heart race. Could she have been so close all these years? I drafted and deleted a dozen emails before finally sending a simple message to all 3 women. "My name is Sarah Mitchell. I recently discovered through DNA testing that I may be your biological daughter, born in 1994 in Columbus, Ohio. If this means anything to you, I would appreciate a conversation." 2 days passed with no response. Then 3. On the 4th day, as I was beginning to lose hope, an email arrived from the Eleanor in Cincinnati. "Sarah, I have waited for this message for 32 years. Yes, I am your birth mother. I would very much like to meet you, if you're willing. We arranged to meet at a cafe halfway between our homes. James offered to come with me, but this felt like something I needed to do alone. The night before, I called my mother, the woman who raised me, to tell her about the meeting. Her voice was tight with emotion, but she expressed support. "She gave you life," she said. "I gave you a home. There's room in your heart for both of us." The cafe was busy when I arrived, my nerves making it hard to breathe. I had no idea what Eleanor looked like, but somehow I knew her the moment she walked in. She had my eyes, or rather, I had hers. She was tall and slender like me, with the same high cheekbones and widow's peak. She scanned the room anxiously until our gazes locked, and then she froze, one hand flying to her mouth. I stood on shaky legs as she approached. Neither of us spoke for a long moment. Then, "You look so much like your grandfather," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "My father. He had those same eyes." We sat and talked for hours. Eleanor told me about her brief relationship with my father, how young and in love they had been. She was only 22 when she got pregnant, working her way through nursing school. My father had returned to his wife, and Eleanor, overwhelmed and alone, had made the painful decision to let them raise me. "I thought about you every day," she said, tears streaming down her face. "Every birthday. Every Christmas. I wondered if you were happy, if you were loved." "I was," I assured her, reaching across the table to take her hand. It felt both strange and familiar, like a memory I couldn't quite place. Eleanor had married a few years after I was born and had 2 more children, a son and a daughter, now in their 20s. My half-siblings. She had told them about me years ago, and they had grown up knowing they had an older sister somewhere. They wanted to meet me, she said, if I was open to it. As we parted that day, Eleanor gave me a small photo album. "I kept this all these years," she explained. "Pictures of my family, your biological family. Your grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins. People who have always known about you and loved you from afar." The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of emotions and new connections. I met my half-siblings, Ryan and Megan, who welcomed me with an enthusiasm that brought fresh tears to my eyes. I saw photos of grandparents I had never known, heard stories of a family history I had never been told. And through it all, I struggled to reconcile these new relationships with the family I had always known. My mother, the woman who raised me, retreated into herself as I explored this new branch of my family tree. Though she expressed support, I could see the pain in her eyes, the fear that I was slipping away from her. It took a heart-wrenching conversation one rainy afternoon for us both to acknowledge the complicated emotions at play. "I'm afraid you won't need me anymore," she confessed, her hands twisting in her lap. "That you'll replace me with her." "You're my mom," I told her firmly. "Nothing changes that. Eleanor gave birth to me, but you're the one who raised me. You're both part of who I am now." Slowly, tentatively, we began to build a new kind of family, one that included both the woman who gave me life and the woman who shaped it. It wasn't easy. There were jealousies and misunderstandings, old hurts and new boundaries to navigate. But there was also healing, for all of us. 6 months after that first DNA test result, we gathered for Thanksgiving, an unconventional family by any standard. My mother and Eleanor, once strangers connected only by their love for the same man, now connected by their love for me. My half-siblings, getting to know the sister they had always wondered about. James, my rock through it all, watching with quiet pride as I found my footing in this new reality. As we sat around the table, I looked at these faces, some familiar from birth, others new but somehow recognizable, and felt a sense of wholeness I hadn't known was missing. The truth had been painful, yes. It had shaken the foundation of my identity and forced me to re-examine everything I thought I knew about myself and my family. But it had also expanded my world, giving me new connections, new understanding, and a deeper appreciation for the complicated ways love shapes our lives. I don't know what the future holds for this blended family of ours. I only know that I'm grateful for both the mother who chose to raise me and the mother who made the painful choice to let me go. Both acts were born of love, and both women helped make me who I am today. If there's one thing I've learned from this journey, it's that family isn't just about DNA. It's about the people who show up, who stay, who love you through the hardest parts of life. Sometimes those people are related to you by blood, and sometimes they're not. Sometimes they've been there all along, and sometimes they find their way to you later. But when they do, when you find your people, however that happens, it's worth every difficult moment along the way. So if you're watching this and wondering about your own story, your own family mysteries, I encourage you to be brave. The truth isn't always easy, but it is always worth knowing. And you never know what, or who, you might find on the other side of that discovery. Thank you for watching our story. If it touched you in any way, please like this video and subscribe to our channel. We'll be sharing more about our journey as we continue to navigate this new family dynamic, and we'd love to have you along for the ride. Because sometimes the most beautiful chapters of our lives begin with the words we're most afraid to read. Your DNA results are ready.